The mockery. I remember walking into Le Jardin, a small but upscale restaurant downtown, feeling a mixture of hunger and fatigue. My day had been long, filled with meetings, client pitches, and a cascade of emails that never seemed to end. I wanted nothing more than a quiet meal and some peace. The waiter approached with a practiced smile, not yet aware of the storm brewing behind my calm exterior. "I'll have the grilled salmon with extra lemon, no butter, and a side of steamed vegetables," I said, detailing each part of the order carefully. He paused, cocked his head, and let out a short, incredulous laugh. "Seriously? That's what you want? You know, there are plenty of better dishes on the menu." I froze for a second, taken aback by the audacity. Most people would have ignored such a remark, but something in his tone, the smug superiority, ignited a quiet fire in me. "I'll stick with what I ordered," I said calmly, projecting as much control as I could muster. He shrugged, clearly unconcerned, and walked away, leaving me with a sense of mild irritation and curiosity about how this meal would unfold. As I waited, I observed the restaurant. It was elegant, with polished tables, soft lighting, and the quiet murmur of conversation. But it wasn't the ambience that captured my attention. It was a stark contrast between this waiter's attitude and the level of service I believed every customer deserved. I realized something important in that moment. People often underestimate the power of small gestures. The way he treated me wasn't just a reflection of his personality. It was a reflection of his potential or lack thereof. I decided, silently, that this encounter wouldn't end the way he expected. When my meal arrived, perfectly plated and smelling divine, I took a moment to appreciate the skill behind it. The salmon was cooked to perfection, the vegetables bright and crisp. I ate slowly, savoring every bite, aware that my presence here could teach a subtle lesson about dignity and respect. When the meal concluded, I asked for the bill. The waiter returned, his previous arrogance tempered by the formality of the situation. I reached into my wallet, pulled out a tip, and handed it to him with a steady hand. "This is for your service," I said quietly. "I hope it encourages you to see the value in treating every customer with respect. Every interaction is an opportunity. Don't waste it." He stared at the tip, then at me, confusion and something resembling guilt crossing his face. He opened his mouth to respond but found no words. I left the restaurant quietly, leaving behind more than just money. I left a lesson in dignity, potential, and opportunity. Over the next few weeks, I couldn't help but wonder how that encounter had affected him. Sometimes, small gestures ripple in ways we cannot immediately see. I returned to the restaurant occasionally, observing subtly, noting the changes in behavior among the staff. And slowly, a transformation became evident. The waiter, once smug and dismissive, began treating customers with a renewed sense of attention. He smiled more genuinely, offered suggestions with care, and seemed almost alive in a way that had been absent before. It fascinated me, the idea that a simple tip, combined with a small lesson in respect and observation, could shift someone's perspective so profoundly. Months passed, and I continued with my life, meetings, business ventures, personal growth. Yet, the memory of that night lingered. It reminded me that influence comes in many forms, often unexpected. Sometimes, it's not about commanding attention or asserting authority. It's about planting seeds in moments that seem insignificant, moments where choices can alter the trajectory of a life. Then one day, I received a message through a mutual acquaintance. "You might not remember me, but the lesson you left that night changed everything. I've started my own business. I remember your words every day. Thank you." I smiled quietly, realizing the profound impact of small gestures and the incredible potential hidden within fleeting moments of human interaction. But even as I reflected on this, I understood that life is never linear. The waiter's path was just beginning, and the consequences of that small act of kindness and firm assertion of dignity had set him on a trajectory that could lead to unforeseen challenges, opportunities, and tests of character. I leaned back in my chair, considering the ripples of influence. Every decision we make, every interaction we have, carries potential far beyond our immediate understanding. And I knew, deep down, that the story was far from over. Because when you plant a seed in someone's life, the harvest is never predictable. It grows, evolves, and sometimes changes everything in ways you could never anticipate. The awakening. Weeks passed after that unforgettable night at Le Jardin, but the memory of the encounter stayed with me. I often thought about the young waiter, his arrogance, his smug laughter, and the quiet lesson I had left behind along with that tip. Little did I know, that moment had ignited something far bigger than I could have imagined. The following week, I returned to Le Jardin, curious to see if anything had changed. As I walked in, I noticed a subtle difference immediately. The staff moved with purpose, smiles genuine, and an atmosphere of professionalism replaced the casual disdain I had previously encountered. And there he was, the same waiter. His posture had shifted. His eyes met mine briefly, with a flash of recognition and something else. Humility, focus, and a spark of determination that had been missing before. He approached, polished and confident, though careful to hide any overt nervousness. "Welcome back, sir," he said, voice steady, with an underlying tone of respect I hadn't heard before. "It's good to see you again." I nodded, observing him. Something told me this wasn't just surface-level behavior. This was the beginning of a change, an awakening. Over the next few months, I noticed subtle shifts in his demeanor each time I visited. He was proactive with clients, attentive, and even began suggesting menu improvements and service enhancements. It was as if the simple gesture of leaving a tip, accompanied by words meant to inspire reflection, had sparked a fire inside him, a desire to prove that he could be more than the limits he had set for himself. Curiosity got the better of me. I asked the restaurant manager one evening about him. "He's different now," the manager said, smiling. "He's always been capable, but he lacked direction. After that night, I don't know what changed. Maybe it was a lesson, maybe luck, but he's transformed. He's more motivated than ever, and he's helping others improve too." I smiled quietly. Small actions often create large ripples. But transformation is never instantaneous or easy. Behind the newfound diligence and attention to detail, I knew he would face doubt, from himself, from others, and from circumstances beyond his control. One evening, I overheard him advising a new colleague, quietly but firmly. "Listen, it's not just about bringing plates or cleaning tables. It's about doing every task with care. Every guest matters. Every interaction counts. If you treat it like a job, you'll be average. If you treat it like an opportunity, you can create something bigger than yourself." I leaned against the wall, impressed. He wasn't just performing better. He was inspiring others, cultivating a culture of excellence, and realizing potential that had always been there. Soon, he began taking initiative outside the immediate scope of his job. He suggested a loyalty program for regular customers, proposed a training session for new waitstaff, and even helped design a new inventory management system that improved efficiency and reduced waste. It was clear. The seed had been planted, and it was growing rapidly. What started as a small gesture, a tip with a lesson, was now manifesting in tangible results that extended beyond personal growth into real-world impact on the restaurant's success. I watched quietly from a corner one evening as he spoke to a group of employees. "You don't need anyone's approval to succeed. All it takes is focus, commitment, and a belief in your own potential. Every action counts. Every choice shapes your future." The words echoed my own philosophy, a testament to the chain reaction one moment can create. But life has a way of testing resolve. Not everyone embraced the changes he was making. Senior waitstaff who had been complacent and resistant to improvement began pushing back, questioning his methods and his authority. He faced criticism, subtle sabotage, and moments of doubt. Yet he persisted. Every challenge became an opportunity to reinforce discipline, focus, and vision. I could see the resilience building in him. The transformation was not just external, it was internal. One night, as I left the restaurant, he approached me quietly. "Sir," he said, hesitating for a moment, "I wanted to thank you for what you did that night. I've been trying to change, and I'm finally starting to see what's possible." I smiled. "You did this yourself. The tip was just a spark. The rest came from within you. Keep going. The world rewards those who take control of their own destiny." The following months saw him grow in confidence and skill. The restaurant thrived, in part because of the subtle leadership he demonstrated. Employees who had once ignored him now sought his advice. Clients complimented the service more than ever, and he began speaking publicly at local workshops, sharing insights on service excellence and personal transformation. The ripple effect was extraordinary. One small act, a tip, a lesson, a nudge toward reflection, had transformed not only his life, but the lives of countless others. Yet, as powerful as these developments were, I knew his journey was far from complete. Bigger opportunities, greater responsibilities, and unforeseen challenges awaited. The seed had been planted, but the tree had yet to bear its full fruit. As I walked away from the restaurant that evening, I smiled, knowing that the story was just beginning. The waiter's potential had been awakened, but the world would continue to test him, and the next chapter would define the true scope of his transformation. The transformation. Months had passed since that fateful night at Le Jardin, and the young waiter's transformation had become undeniable. What had begun as a subtle shift in behavior now blossomed into a profound change in mindset, confidence, and ambition. He no longer simply served meals. He led, quietly, strategically, and with an intensity that drew others in. Staff who had once dismissed him now sought his guidance. Customers noticed the difference, attentiveness, insight, and a care that went far beyond the typical service they had come to expect. One evening, the restaurant manager pulled me aside. "You should see him now," she said, smiling. "He's helping us implement a new scheduling system, mentoring younger staff, and even suggesting new marketing ideas. He's thriving in ways we never imagined." I nodded, pleased but unsurprised. Some people, when given a spark, can ignite a fire that burns far beyond the initial flame. He began taking steps outside the restaurant. Inspired by the tip and the lesson I had left, he started attending evening classes in business management, marketing, and personal development. He devoured books, seeking knowledge that could elevate him beyond the confines of waiting tables. Each day, he applied what he learned at work. He tested ideas, refined processes, and earned the respect of colleagues and supervisors alike. It was remarkable, a living testament to the power of influence and self-determination. But with growth comes resistance. Not everyone was happy with the changes. Some senior staff grew jealous of his rising influence. Certain clients preferred the old, complacent service, and moments of self-doubt occasionally crept into his mind, questioning whether he was truly capable of the ambitions he was beginning to chase. Yet each challenge only strengthened him. He remembered the lesson I had left. Every action matters. Every choice shapes your future. He could either succumb to doubt or rise above it. And rise he did. One afternoon, I returned to the restaurant and noticed him speaking to a group of new hires. His voice was calm, authoritative, yet warm. "Don't just do your job," he told them. "Excel at it. Treat every task as an opportunity to grow, to learn, to lead. Your work reflects who you are, not just what you do. The world notices when you care and rewards those who persist." I observed quietly from a corner, smiling. The lesson had come full circle. He was no longer the same person who had laughed at my order. He had internalized a principle, and it was now radiating outward. Soon, his influence began to reach beyond the restaurant. He organized workshops for local hospitality staff, sharing insights on service excellence and professional development. He mentored aspiring waiters and servers, emphasizing the value of humility, diligence, and seizing opportunity. People began taking notice. Invitations arrived to speak at industry events, and one of the city's top culinary schools offered him a part-time role coaching students. The ripple effect of that single act of generosity, the tip and quiet lesson, was expanding far beyond the original context. However, growth always comes with new tests. He faced situations that challenged not only his skills but his ethics and judgment. Difficult clients, staff disagreements, and operational crises required him to make tough decisions, often under intense pressure. But he thrived. Each trial became a stepping stone, each challenge a lesson, each success a reinforcement of his newfound capabilities. And I watched, proud and curious. The story that began with a laugh and a tip had evolved into a profound transformation, a journey of self-discovery, leadership, and the subtle but powerful effects of influence. One evening, after a particularly demanding day, he approached me quietly. "Sir," he said, voice steady but tinged with humility, I don't know if I could done all this without that night, without your words. You set something in motion. I want to keep building on it, to see how far this can go." I smiled. "The work is yours. I merely provided a spark. You've carried it further than most ever could. But remember, this journey never ends. There's always another challenge, another opportunity, and another chance to grow." He nodded, absorbing the weight of those words. His eyes reflected determination, ambition, and a hunger for the future, a future that was now wide open, waiting to be shaped by his vision and choices. And yet, even in this moment of transformation, the story was far from complete. Greater opportunities awaited, along with unforeseen obstacles that would test every lesson he had learned, every skill he had honed, and every choice he had made. The ripple of that single tip was still spreading, and the real measure of its impact was only beginning to show. Because a journey from laughter to leadership is never linear. It twists, turns, and challenges in ways no one can predict. And the waiter, once scornful and dismissive, had only just begun to understand the full extent of his potential. The influence. Months had passed, and the young waiter's life had transformed dramatically. What began as a small spark, a tip-pair lesson, had evolved into a profound journey of self-discovery, leadership, and influence. He was no longer just a waiter. He had become a mentor, a guide, and an emerging leader within the hospitality industry. His focus, discipline, and attention to detail inspired everyone around him, creating a ripple effect that extended beyond the walls of the restaurant. Word of his transformation spread quickly. Other restaurants began inviting him to speak, local culinary schools offered mentorship roles, and community organizations asked him to lead workshops on professionalism and service excellence. Each new opportunity expanded his influence and reinforced the lessons he had internalized. Yet, despite the accolades, he remained humble. He remembered the night when arrogance and dismissal had once defined him, and he understood the power of small gestures. That night, a tip had been more than money. It had been a recognition of potential, a challenge, and a message. But with growth came challenges that tested every lesson he had learned. A high-profile restaurant chain approached him with an offer to manage multiple locations, each with complex operations and diverse teams. It was a dream opportunity, but the responsibility was enormous. Mistakes could have major consequences, financial, reputational, and personal. He hesitated, reflecting on how far he had come. Could he take this leap? Could he scale his newfound principles across multiple locations, ensuring that every interaction, every employee, and every client experienced excellence? The decision weighed heavily on him. He understood that leadership is measured not just by success, but by the ability to inspire, guide, and elevate others, and the stakes had never been higher. Meanwhile, the restaurant where it all began continued to flourish under his subtle influence. Staff morale soared, service quality improved, and customers noticed the dedication and professionalism that permeated every interaction. One afternoon, the manager approached him with a proposal. "You've done more than anyone could have imagined," she said. "The restaurant has thrived because of you, but there's an opportunity to make an even bigger impact. A consulting firm wants you to help improve service standards across multiple businesses in the city. They'll pay handsomely, and your influence will multiply exponentially." He paused, weighing the offer. The temptation was strong, but he recognized the responsibility it carried. Leadership was no longer about proving himself. It was about amplifying the lessons he had learned, creating systems that could empower others, and guiding change without losing integrity. He accepted. Over the next months, he traveled across the city, working with restaurant owners, staff, and managers to elevate service standards. He implemented training programs, mentorship systems, and operational strategies that improved efficiency, customer satisfaction, and employee engagement. The ripple effect was astonishing. Restaurants under his guidance saw higher revenue, improved staff retention, and stronger reputations. He became a respected figure in the hospitality industry, known not for his previous arrogance, but for his vision, discipline, and ability to inspire change. Yet even as his influence grew, he never forgot the night that started it all. The night a simple gesture reminded him of the potential within himself. That tip had been more than money. It had been an invitation to rise above limitation, doubt, and ridicule. And now, he was paying it forward. He mentored young staff, guided colleagues, and shared the lesson that every action matters, every choice shapes the future, and every person carries a potential for greatness. One evening, as he walked through a bustling restaurant where he had implemented a new training program, he noticed a young waiter struggling with a difficult customer. He approached quietly and placed a hand on the waiter's shoulder. "Remember," he said gently, "every interaction is an opportunity. Treat it with care, and you'll be amazed at what it can become." The young waiter nodded, absorbing the words with a mix of gratitude and determination. And in that moment, he realized the cycle had begun anew. Influence, when shared, multiplies beyond comprehension. The journey that began with mockery, arrogance, and a single tip had become a story of transformation, growth, and legacy. But even as he reached new heights, he understood the journey would never truly end. There were more challenges to face, more lives to touch, and more lessons to learn. As he looked out over the city skyline that evening, he smiled. The story was far from finished. The world would continue to test him, push him, and surprise him, but he was ready. Because a small gesture, a single act of recognition and respect, had changed not just one life, but countless others. And the next chapter of influence was only beginning. The Yendi, with transformation and influence in motion, leaving the door open for future chapters.